Joining us now, NBC's Yamiche Alcindor, Tim Miller, former communications director for Jeb Bush 2016 and writer-at-large for the Bulwark, as well as MSNBC political analyst. NBC's Vaughn Hillyard is here with me on set. Vaughn, so I wonder how, in your observation, Arizona Republicans are approaching this ruling and how it's going to land with the folks there, the voters in particular.
Right. You could say that Republicans, a great many of them, have deep, moral, justifiable convictions on the abortion issue. But the issue in 2022, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, was a moment in time. And 2 years later, suddenly states, including archaic laws like an 1864 territorial law that bans all abortions, even in the cases of rape and incest, suddenly becomes real life. And real life stories start to come forward, and also the political ramifications. That's where you see even Carrie Lake change her position, saying 2 years ago she would have defended it as governor, calling it a great law. But take a look at just part of her statement there, in which she says, "I speak to more Arizonans than anyone, and it is abundantly clear that the pre-statehood law is out of step with Arizonans." Listen to her just 2 years ago and compare that statement to this.
Obviously, I think Roe v. Wade should be overturned, and I think the Supreme Court, I have a good feeling that they're going to do the right thing this time. And again, I'll echo what Steve just said. We have a great law on the books right now. If that happens, we will be a state where we will not be taking the lives of our unborn anymore.
Former Republican Arizona Governor Doug Ducey also posted a tweet in which he said, in part, quote, "The ruling today is not the outcome I would have preferred." Current Congressman David Schweikert, who is in a competitive congressional district, he said, quote, "I do not support today's ruling from the AZ Supreme Court. This issue should be decided by Arizonans, not legislated from the bench. I encourage the state legislature to address this issue immediately." Also heard from Juan Ciscomani, another Republican in the district, which said today's ruling is a disaster for women and providers. These are Republicans in the state of Arizona that are saying, look, this goes too far. And frankly, when you look at exit polling from 2022, 2/3 of Arizonans say that they want abortion rights in the state of Arizona.
We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But Yamiche, I want to go to you because as Republicans like Trump and Carrie Lake say this issue should be up to the states, up to residents of states, what are you hearing from Arizonans? Carrie Lake says she's talked to more of them than anybody.
Well, Chris, this has really been a bombshell decision and really has sent earthquake-like vibes across the state of Arizona, because you have women who are saying that they feel like this decision is cruel, that it will put their lives at risk. Take a listen to more of what we're hearing.
Honestly, it was a punch in the gut as a mother, as a sister, as a woman. Childbirth and bearing a child is not easy. And it comes with a lot of challenges. And I know that they say, oh, it's only, if in the case of the mother's health, but who is to determine that,
I just feel like it should be out of the government's control. I just feel like we're going back in time.
I think it's a culmination of right-wing politics that has brought us to this situation where the political culture has become much less tolerant.
So you really hear a lot of voters there echoing what we see in polls and what Vaughn was just talking about. The majority of Americans, and it sounds like the majority of Arizonans, they want to have some sort of access to abortion. And you hear women, both Republican and Democrat, talking about the fact that pregnancy can get really complicated. It can get really dangerous. It can be very personal what needs to happen between a woman and her doctor. And to have the state really coming in and saying that there's going to be this near total ban and that doctors should face up to 2 to 5 years just really is very scary for so many people. Of course, there are people that are pro-abortion rights who have advocated for this. Of course, there was a generational win after Roe v. Wade was overturned. But here in Arizona, and to say there in Arizona, you really are starting to hear from people who are very angry about this. Chris?
Let me play devil's advocate if I can, Tim. How much do we really know about who's going to get blame or credit for this? And I'm talking about Arizona in particular. And I want to look at the 2022 midterms. According to our 2022 exit poll, and Vaughn sort of mentioned this, 62% of voters said abortion should be legal in all or most cases. But Katie Hobbs, the Democrat, defeated Carrie Lake for governor by less than 1%. Is it possible Democrats are making too much of this ruling, thinking it might give them a big advantage in Arizona?
I think it definitely helps them in Arizona. I talked to a lot of Republicans yesterday in Arizona. We saw a lot of Republican tweets that you just put up in Arizona. So I think Republicans are telling you that they're worried about it. I do think, and this is something I think a lot of time the Democrats don't understand, there are a lot of Donald Trump voters that are pro-choice. Donald Trump brought a lot of people into the party, these working class voters who are not evangelical, who are secular, who used to be Democrats, the famous Obama-Trump voters. Most of them are pro-choice, or at least somewhere in the middle when it comes to abortion. And so there are a lot of voters out there that on these kinds of ballot issues or in these polls, they'll say they're pro-choice, but also for Donald Trump. So it's incumbent upon the Democrats to run a campaign to peel off some of those people. Now, some of those folks are huge Donald Trump supporters. They're going to stick with him through thick and thin. There's another group, I think, when they see the real potential ramifications of something like an 1864 territorial law, from the Tombstone era coming into, being, the new law of the land in Arizona, where it's a 0-week abortion ban, no exceptions except life of the mother, then stuff gets really real. And I think that is something where there are these swing voters. Some of them are those Obama-Trump voters, and then some of them are the more traditional Republican types that we've seen moving to the Democrats in the Phoenix suburbs, Maricopa County, over the past few cycles. And so I do think it helps Democrats with both of those groups, but they're going to have to make the case.
Vaughn, you've covered Trump as well as Arizona politics. I haven't been to Arizona in a little while, but I've been reading a lot of interviews with voters, particularly in light of what the state Supreme Court did there. And look, the split is evident, but voters who support choice are not necessarily telling reporters, at least, that they're hanging their vote on choice. They're talking about the economy. They're talking about immigration. There are some young people who you think might be most worried about it. It would impact them potentially for the longest, right? Who want to talk about student loans, and did Joe Biden deliver on student loans? Right. I mean, is Arizona unique in that way? How do you see this playing out based on your experience both with Donald Trump and with Arizona?
Right. I think it's going to be really interesting to have voter conversations over these next 7 months because of that, right? And it's not necessarily a straight answer that we have. Of course, there are other issues that matter to voters. And there's a question, right? Donald Trump, you already see him hedging on his position. Carrie Lake suggesting that, maybe that 15-week abortion ban is what she wants on the books, right? Are some voters willing to give greater leniency or be like, okay, I don't want an all-out ban on abortion. I think the territorial ban is bad, but I may be okay with a 15-week abortion ban. I think that there is folks may be on a different metric scale here when it comes to this issue. And really, there's not much of a case study even with political elections on this, except for the 2022 election. We could go back 22 years ago. There was a race for governor, Janet Napolitano. She was a Democrat. Arizona was even deeper red at that point in time, and she was running against then Congressman Matt Salmon, who actually was running at the time, and she was highly critical of him for being against abortion rights, even in the case of incest and rape. And she, in a dramatic win, won her race in 2002 in the state of Arizona by 11,000 votes, largely on this abortion issue. So this is really going to be kind of, outside of that race, the 2022 race, we're going to be learning a lot here from 2024 about the impact on the electorate at large, not just in Arizona, but across the country. I
wonder if you think, Tim, from and I know we're going back a couple of days now with Donald Trump's decision on let's leave it to the states, right? But if say a 15-week abortion ban, something more specific, might have been not just better for him, but easier for people in some of these battleground states, in some of these true purple states to run on. I don't know. What do you think? I'm curious because you talk about how folks on the Democratic side can run on this. How do you run on this in a purple state?
As a Republican, yeah. Look, just first, we should just note disastrous timing for Donald Trump to put out a video saying he wants to leave this up to the states, so that 24 hours later, Arizona's like, okay, I'll take you up on that. 0 weeks now in Arizona. I just think that puts him in a huge bind and a bad strategic move by him. I'll say, I've said this since Roe was overturned. I think that there is a lack of appreciation that actually the majority view in this country is some kind of compromise on abortion. I think that had Republicans after Roe tried to work with Democrats to come up with some kind of middle ground solution, it wouldn't have been perfect. There would have been complaints. Democrats could have still ran on it. But I think that would have been a much better place for Republicans to be. Instead, they end up with these 0-week bans, the bounty law in Texas, and those are wrong on the policy, but they're also just terrible politics. And so I think that's why they're in a bad place right now.
Tim Miller, Yamiche Alcindor, Vaughn Hillyard, thank you.